Hi there everyone, it's Jaycee for another perfect pairing. Your hot foil plates are perfect for scrapbook layouts. In this tutorial, I'm going to share 3 of my favorite crafting techniques to incorporate your beautiful Altenew hot foil plates and foil transfer sheets. Before starting any of my foiling techniques on memory keeping or scrapbooking, let's take a look at the 2 photos I'll be using on my layout. These are just 2 photos of my cat Cookie, and I printed these out using my inkless photo printer. And I like smaller photos on 12 by 12 layouts. So this is a 4 by 6 photo that I cut in half so that I have 2 2 by 3 photos. And I'll use both of these together on my 12 by 12 inch layout. So now that I have this photo out, I'll show you my first technique on using heat transfer foils and hot foil plates on memory keeping or scrapbook layouts. The first item I'll bring out is the Sweet Sentiments hot foil plate set. This coordinates with the Sweet Sentiments die set, but for this project I'm just going to be using the hot foil plate set. Since I have 2 photos, I thought it would be nice to break out 2 of the hot foil plates. So I'm taking out the hello and you so that I can put foil on each of these photos. And now I will bring out my hot foil system. And while my platform heats up, I've already cut a few small pieces, just slightly larger than the hot foil plates for hello and you. And one of the things I like doing, instead of finding large sentiment banners or titles for my scrapbook pages, I like to foil directly onto the photos themselves. And I find this a really quick and easy way to draw your attention to the title of the photo, but also lead your eyes directly to the sentiment as well. So on both of my photos, I'm planning for the placement of the hot foil plates. I can use a little bit of satin masking tape to hold everything in place, but I'm going to take the majority of the tack off by running the tape over my hand. And then I can tape down the hot foil plate and my small piece of foil onto my photo. And this helps control the placement of the foil directly onto my photos. And then once my platform is at the temperature to accept foil, I can carefully pick up the photo with the hot foil plate and my small piece of foil and orient it as it should be directly onto my platform. And I will do that for both photos. Then I can lay my shim and spacer pad on top and start the timer. And then I'll simply follow the instructions for adhering the foil to a regular piece of paper and run this through my die cutting machine. And then what I'm left with are beautiful foil impressions directly on top of my photo. So here's my completed focal point with my foil details directly on top of my photos. And now I don't have to worry about die cutting a title, for example, for my scrapbook layout. So I'll set this aside and keep my hot foil machine out. So for the second technique that I like to use on my scrapbook layouts, I stepped ahead a little bit and did this off camera, directly onto some high quality watercolor paper. I used a half sheet of the Watercolor Paper Pad, the 9 by 12 cold pressed watercolor paper pad. I used that same gold foil that I was using earlier on my photos with the Eucalyptus Wreath hot foil plate. By the way, this has a beautiful coordinating 6 by 6 stencil for easy coloring, but I will color my images in a different way today. So after foiling this image twice onto watercolor paper, here's my second iteration here. I will loosely color both images with some Altenew watercolor brush markers. I think the colors from the watercolor brush markers set in Autumn Festival will coordinate nicely with the photos I already have. I'm going to start with Sea Forest watercolor brush marker and very loosely fill in a few of these leaves. And I'm applying this directly from the brush marker. And then with a clean water brush, I'm very loosely diluting and spreading that watercolor. Onto my acrylic block that I have on the side, I'll add a few drops of the ultramarine directly from the brush. And then use my water brush to add a little tinge of blue to all of these leaves. I think nothing beats the shine of foiling, which is why I prefer to do a foiling resist, a hot foil resist with watercolor. I think you just get much more vibrant and professional looking results in comparison to heat embossing. And that's the end result of this first image. On the second one, I'm going to add more blue. But you can see, as you can see, no embossing powder is going to give you as much shine as foil does. So I'm going to work on the second panel and do the same technique that I did here on this first one and just do loosely watercolor over the entire image. So just to reiterate, I'm just adding very loose areas of ultramarine, and then I'll go back with Sea Forest and a water brush and completely fill in the eucalyptus leaves. And that finishes both very loosely colored panels with my eucalyptus images. And one more thing I forgot to mention is definitely keep these scraps. We're going to use it in the next section. But for now, I'm going to put all of my markers away and use my craft scissors to fussy cut both of these images as close as I can. So far, we've covered two ways to add foiling to your memory keeping pages. So that's foiling directly onto your photos, a foil watercolor resist, and then lastly, I will use the scraps from the eucalyptus wreath on the third technique on using hot foiling in your scrapbooking pages. So here are a few of the larger pieces that remain from the eucalyptus wreath hot foil plate. In order to save some time from die cutting, I'm just going to use the Creative Cutouts nested wreath. These are laser cut cardstocks with super fine detail, and there are 3 pieces of each of the sizes of these wreaths. For my project, I'm going to take the largest one. So in order to use these scrap foil pieces in my scrapbook layout, I'm going to need a few more crafty items. One of them is the Altenew Crafter's Essential Silicone Stamping Mat. I highly recommend laying down a non-stick surface for this next step. Of course, I'll need my nested wreath laser cut cardstock. And then I'm using a liquid adhesive. The importance of this liquid adhesive is that this one goes tacky once dry. And I'm applying a generous dollop directly onto my stamping mat. And then I have an old sponge type dauber. You can also use an old paintbrush if that's what you have in your stash. And I'm going to randomly apply this glue throughout the cardstock. And I'm applying a thin layer of this glue all around the wreath. And the liquid adhesive that I use goes tacky really quickly. So in no time, I can start with the foiling technique using my scraps. Now all I have to do is burnish the dull side of the foil onto the tacky side of the cardstock. And all I have to do is keep going around my wreath until I feel like I've exhausted a scrap. And then I can move on to another piece until all of the tackiness is gone from the cardstock. After you feel like you've burnished the entire cardstock piece, you can add another layer if you want. I really like the vintage feel of this wreath, so I'm going to leave it as is. And to help take off the residual tack from the liquid adhesive, I'm using whatever I like to use for my anti-static powder to help eliminate that stickiness that may remain on the cardstock. And with the help of the silicone stamping mats, all of my pieces lift away real easy. And now I can set these all aside for the final part of my scrapbook layout. Onto my Altenew cutting mat, I've taped down a 12 by 12 inch piece of white cardstock. This will act as my base for my scrapbook page. And now I will bring back and plan the layout of my scrapbook page. So here's my photos with my foiled elements, my foiled watercolor resist eucalyptus wreath, and then finally fragments of the nested wreath laser cut pieces that have some foil gilding to them. These will act as my 3 focal elements for my scrapbook page. And now I will work on adding them directly onto my 12 by 12 inch canvas. I'll start with my photos. I'm going to use brushed gold metallic cardstock from Altenew. I'm using the Brush Gold cardstock to matte the two photos I have. Then I will use the Eucalyptus Wreath watercolor piece to further frame the two pictures I have. And I will use pieces of the Altenew Instant Dimension foam tape to put these two pieces together. And then I will use the other wreath to further embellish this. I'm going to cut it. And then after cutting the wreath in half, I'll tuck in and hide the open end and further frame my two photos. And then with fragments of the gilded nested wreath, I'll tuck these and break up the repetition of the wreath. I went ahead and used all of the leaf images except for the stems on some of the leaves to complete this really full wreath arrangement around my two photos. I'm going to finish this scrapbook layout with a little bit of journaling. I have the Altenew Must Have gel pen in gold. And then of course no project of mine is ever complete without a lot of splatter. I think Enchanted Gold is going to match really nicely with the embellishments I already have on my scrapbook page. I'm just using those foil offcuts to protect the photos since I have them within reach. And then once I've finished with the splatter, that finishes my scrapbook layout dedicated to my cat Cookie. And just as a recap, we've covered 3 techniques to incorporate foiling into your scrapbook pages. The first one is foiling directly onto your photos using some Altenew Sentiment foil plates. And then for number 2, nothing really beats the beauty of a foil watercolor resist. I think it shines so much better than a heat embossed powder resist. And number 3, don't forget to use your scraps to make some beautifully distressed and gilded die cut pieces. The texture that you get from using your scraps and a little bit of tacky liquid adhesive instantly adds a lot of interest and shine to your scrapbook pages. My series encourages you to shop your existing Altenew stash and rekindle their love with newer releases. Perfect Pairings with Jaycee airs on the Altenew channel every second and fourth Sunday of the month. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for tuning in to this perfect pairing episode with me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hello there! Are you still looking for project ideas and card making inspirations? Well, if you are, look no further. We have tons here at the Altenew YouTube channel. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that we do upload. To help keep your creative juices flowing, we have a couple more videos that you can watch here too. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.